What's up, everybody? Welcome to Water. My name is Tyler, and I'm your real-life remembrancer. As you can probably tell from the intro, today's video is about one thing: getting started with Warhammer 40,000. This video is broken down into sections which represent all the different ways that you can interact with the Warhammer 40k universe. So if you know you're already interested in a particular topic, you can jump straight to that section. In each of these sections, I'm going to give you a quick overview and then talk about some of the tools that you'll absolutely need to get started, and then maybe what your first upgrade or investment should be if you decide that the hobby's for you. My aim is to keep this video brief, so I won't spend too much time on each section. However, if one of the sections stands out to you, be sure to subscribe because I'll have more detailed videos coming in the future. I'll also be working on a video that more broadly explains what Warhammer is in a more general sense. That video will be aimed more at like friends and family, people who aren't interested in engaging with Warhammer, but maybe want to know what it is. This video, however, is aimed at people that have seen Warhammer 40k, said, hey, that looks cool, I want to try it, but I don't know how. And of course, if I talk about anything in this video that you don't understand, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to fill you in. One final note before we jump into the deep end, be aware that there are multiple products that are called Warhammer. Today, we're discussing Warhammer 40,000, which is a sci-fi tabletop war game. There are other versions of Warhammer like Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer Underworlds, Warhammer, well, you get the picture. Getting into our first topic here, we're going to talk about what Warhammer 40k is first and foremost, which is a tabletop war game. Now, if you've never heard of a tabletop war game or you haven't looked into it yet, it's a large table-based game, usually on a very large table, maybe 6 by 4 feet, sometimes smaller tables with more modern games, but it used to be generally large dining room sized tables where a set number of players moves miniatures around a board and rolls dice to play the game. Now, I don't want to talk about the rules of the game or anything like that in this video, but there's one thing that I should mention. There's some chance that if you're watching this video, you've heard of the term points. Armies are based on points values, and each army book assigns a set number of points to a given model. Generally, your end goal is going to be to reach about 2,000 points. 2,000 points is a standard matched play game. However, this is by no means necessary, and do not feel obligated to buy 2,000 points worth of models out of the gate. Simply start with one kit of models, make sure that it's something that you enjoy, and most people are going to have a pretty easy time finding others that are willing to play 500-point games. So aim for 500 points if you want to start playing the tabletop game. Now, there's a few things you're going to need to get started outside of the models themselves. The first is a measuring tape, and the second is a whole lot of dice. Beyond that, you're probably going to want your army book, otherwise known as a codex. These are books that are based on each individual faction in the Warhammer 40k universe, the ones that you can play anyway, and are about 1/3 rules and about 2/3 everything else, lore, pictures, stories, that kind of thing. Now, there are ways to get rules for your army without buying anything. You can use apps like Battlescribe, something that you can Google. But generally, most people, especially if you're getting started in the hobby and you really want to engage with your faction and sort of get into it, the Codex is a great place to start and should easily be one of your first purchases. Now, beyond that, you're looking at a core rulebook. Core rulebook is not something you have to buy. You can get a cheat sheet for the basic rules online, and Games Workshop does offer a few ways through the starter kits and stuff like that where you can get shorter rules manuals. But if you have the money to spend and you really want to engage with the hobby and read a lot of the generalized lore that doesn't necessarily focus on one specific faction, then the rulebook is a great product to grab. Of course, the final and most important part of playing the game is having a place to play it. You're going to be looking for something called an FLGS. That's Friendly Local Game Store. Now, Games Workshop does have actual brick and mortar storefronts. They can be noted by their Games Workshop official branding. Now, some of these stores have a bit of a negative reputation, and Games Workshop is known for having sort of a sales first focus. Some of their locations don't even have tables for you to play and don't have a lot of people in the store or a great atmosphere. Now, having said that, there are stores that do have great atmospheres and that do have tables to play. So definitely check it out and don't just write it off without looking into it. But generally, if you're in the United States, a local game store, a hobby shop, if you will, is definitely going to be your best bet. Simply Google local hobby shops or game stores in your area, and you're looking for places that sell things like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, board games, Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing. Of course, one final option is to play at home. Now, it's easy enough to set up a game on your kitchen table using general household items as terrain. This is an excellent way to get started, and if you have a sibling or a friend that you're getting into the game with, easily this is the way that you should play your first few games. However, if you find yourself one day becoming a dedicated hobbyist, you can get yourself your very own gaming table at home, build and paint your own terrain, and have wondrous games in the comfort of your own home. So, that's how you get started playing the game, but of course to do so, you're gonna need some models. There's a few different ways that you can buy models. Many of the larger local game stores have a flat 10 to 15% off Games Workshop model discount. And of course, supporting your local hobby shop is very important. So if you have one nearby, that's always the place to get your kits. But if that's not an option for you, other ways that you can save some money are r/miniswap on Reddit or eBay. There are many local game stores that also post on eBay, and you can purchase brand new models at a 10 to 15% discount right on eBay. One place I don't recommend is the official Games Workshop store. It's wonderful to browse their model range there, but paying full price and waiting a really long time for shipping isn't always great. And one important thing to touch on when you're buying your first kit of models is, how do I pick a faction? Now, I can't dive into that here. There's way too many factions to talk about, but be sure to subscribe because I have a video coming in the future to tackle just that. However, let's say you've decided on your faction, you have a box of models. What's next? What do I need? And again, a friendly reminder as I go throughout this video, anytime you're buying tools or anything for the hobby, a friendly local game store is the best place to spend your money. But if for whatever reason you don't have access to those, links to all of the tools that I mentioned in this video are down below and you'll be able to get started right away. To start building your model kits, you're going to need a hobby knife. Now, this is basically an X-Acto knife, but a little bit more geared towards the hobby and less about opening boxes. There's two different approaches. You can buy a hobby knife with really expensive blades that are designed to last a long time, or you can do what I did and get a handle and then go on eBay and buy 500 blades from China for $5 and just go through the blades really quickly. The second thing you need is a pair of nippers. These are going to help you get the plastic off of the sprue and just with general hobbying. And of course, you're never going to finish those models if you can't stick them together. You're going to need the most important tool, glue. Now there's two main types of glue that I want to tell you about. The first is actually not a glue at all. It's called Tamiya plastic cement. Now, this video isn't sponsored by Tamiya, but it should be. Hit me up, Tamiya. This stuff is liquid gold, and I absolutely swear by it. If you start off the hobby already using Tamiya plastic cement, you're gonna be worlds ahead in both the time-saving department and heartache. What the plastic cement practically does is chemically fuse the parts together so that the bond is basically as strong as the plastic itself. And the other best part about it is that it's super quick drying, so as soon as you stick those parts together, it's pretty much safe to let go and they're gonna hold their own. But if for whatever reason you're not working with plastic and you're working with resin or metal or other materials, there's a very particular type of super glue that I suggest you absolutely have. That's going to be the Loctite Super Glue Gel Control, not to be confused with their liquid super glue, which a lot of people tend to go for because it just kind of makes sense. It's super glue, it sticks stuff together, great. But the problem with the liquid is it can sometimes leave a dusty residue behind, and it's a lot harder to control and can generally be more flowy and runny than you actually want. The Gel Control holds its shape, goes exactly where you want it, allows you to use a lot less glue, and again, is very quick drying and just something I absolutely recommend. And again, links to that are down below. To finish off the modeling section, I'm going to tell you what I think your first upgrade should be. Let's say you've jumped in, you've assembled your first kit, and you're ready to spend a few more dollars. Two words: basing materials. This is going to be products like scenic glue, sand, flock, little bushes. Using these basing materials will really help bring your models to life and they'll look amazing on the battlefield. So you've got your models assembled and you're looking at a blank canvas. It's time to get painting. Now, painting itself is a whole world, a whole hobby, a whole industry, quite frankly, and I hardly have enough time in this video to tell you how to paint. But I can always teach a man to fish, so that's what we're here to do. The first thing you need to get started painting is some paint. Now, there are a lot of hobby paints to choose from, but today I'm going to focus on the two that I think are the most accessible and make the most sense for new hobbyists. The first might be a little obvious. It's Games Workshop's official Citadel line of paints. A lot of hobbyists get started out with these paints because, well, they're the official paints. They're the paints that Games Workshop uses themselves for the box art, and they're all the official colors. These are a perfectly good paint to get started with, and there's only two real caveats. One, they're a little overpriced, and 2, the pots that they come in are awful. But if you're really interested in having the official colors and those 2 things don't put you off, then definitely go the easy way and get Citadel paint. It's available basically anywhere that Warhammer products are available. The second choice, the one that I really recommend, is Vallejo. Vallejo is a paint company based in Spain. They have multiple paint ranges that span vast amounts of colors. They're relatively affordable. They come in great little dropper bottles. Importantly, they are the second most available hobby paint in the United States, as far as I can tell anyway, and they are just a joy to use. They're really a staple of the hobby. Another great thing is that Vallejo makes a lot of the supplementary products that we use in painting, like varnishes, mediums, flow improvers, thinners, things of that nature. And so generally, if you don't feel compelled to go the official route with the Games Workshop products, I definitely think you should check out Vallejo and use their products instead. The truth is, miniature paint in general is pretty expensive, especially per ounce if you compare it to regular paint. You might be asking yourself, can I use regular paint, the paint that I might buy at Michael's? The answer is, just don't. Yeah, there are ways you can get away with it, but ultimately just save yourself the heartache and get miniature paint. But the main point that I want to make is that you don't have to go all in. Just buy the colors that you need for your first project and build your collection from there. Once you've got your paints, you're going to need a brush. Now, right off the bat, I'll tell you, do not buy Games Workshop brushes. They just aren't good. Generally, you're looking for sable hair brushes. If you don't have a lot of money to spend, just go on Amazon or to your local art store and get sable hair brushes. However, if you want to invest in the tools, I recommend Monument Hobbies at kind of a mid-range price, and I recommend the Winsor Newton Series 7 at a more expensive price point. One brand that's available at a lot of local game stores is the Army Painter brand. These brushes are definitely okay to get started with, but I really don't think that they're worth the slightly mid-level price. Because this video is aimed at new hobbyists though, the one important takeaway that I can give you is that the brush isn't super important. It does matter, and once you get really invested in the hobby, it's going to be worth it to really think about your brushes. But when you're just getting started and you're slapping paint on your first few models, just do it with any brush you can get your hands on. The final tool that you're going to need, it's a simple one. It's a water cup for washing your brush. Now, if you go on the Games Workshop website, they're going to try to sell you a water pot for $10. Don't buy that. All you need is a simple cup or glass from your kitchen. The miniature paints that we use, especially the ones that I mentioned like Citadel and Vallejo, are water-based acrylics. They're non-toxic and they wash out with soap and water. So don't overthink it in that sense. And let's say that you've slapped some paint down and it's time to upgrade. You're ready to add to your arsenal. An absolute must-have for brush painting is a wet palette. Now, wet palette almost made it on my list of essential items, but the truth is you really don't need it to paint. But the flip side of that argument is that it makes it way easier and it saves you a lot of time and money in the long run. See, the thing about these paints is if you put them on a dry surface, they dry out pretty quickly. What a wet palette does is preserves the moisture in your paint. This allows you to paint for much longer with much smaller amounts of paint. I recommend the Stay Wet palette. That's the palette that I use, but any palette will do, and you can even make them at home just with a sponge and a Tupperware container. So if you're just getting started painting, Google wet palette and check it out. Let's say all that tabletop wargame stuff is too much for you. You're just interested in the lore and you want to read a book. Well, you're in luck because Games Workshop's subsidiary company, Black Library, has thousands of publications to go through. The most important of which, and the one that I think you should get started with, is the Horus Heresy series. Now, this series has ballooned into well over 50 books and is absolutely massive, but the thing is, only the first 5 or maybe the first 10 are super essential, and then you can kind of jump through the series as you see fit. More recently, Black Library has released a couple of new series, one based on the 18 Primarchs. If you don't know who they are, you will soon. And the other is The Siege of Terra, which focuses on the ultimate climax of the Horus Heresy. Some other great reads that people don't talk about nearly as much are the short stories on Black Library. For about $4 a pop, you can get a lot of great little 30 to 50 page stories, and they're some of my favorite stories that there are in general. Two that I can recommend are The Altar of Cyrene and The Test of Faith. And finally, it's important to note that Games Workshop does a great job of making sure that most of their publications make it out as audiobooks. So if that's the way you enjoy consuming your fiction, you're all set. So maybe you've gotten to this point and you've said, whoa, 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 painting, tabletop games, books? That stuff's for nerds. I just want to slay some alien scum in a video game. Well, you're covered. Games Workshop is notorious for handing out their license to anybody who's willing to pay. Now, if you're into turn-based games, there are a plethora, both good and bad. However, that's not really my jam, so I can't recommend any today. Definitely go Google them, or simply jump on Steam and sort by user reviews. The two games that I want to recommend are kind of old. The first is the Dawn of War PC games. Now, there are 3 Dawn of War games. The first, which is critically acclaimed and everybody loved, the second, which some people recommend, and the third, which nobody recommends. I'm not a huge fan of the second one, but the first one is a masterpiece. Yes, it's old, but I've played it recently and it still holds up on modern PCs. It's definitely going to give you one of the most authentic Warhammer 40k experiences that you can have in a game. The other game to check out is Space Marine, a self-titled first-person shooter that originally came out on Xbox 360 and is now available on pretty much every platform they could manage. This game is a little old as well, but not nearly as old as Dawn of War 1. It holds up a little bit better and is just a wonderful game. Playing through the narrative campaign is a joy, and while the online servers are mostly dead because it's based on public servers, the community does sometimes get people together to play on a special night. But more importantly, Space Marine 2, after 9 long years, has finally been announced. Everybody in the community is waiting with bated breath, so join us on that. And as I mentioned, beyond that, there are a ton of Warhammer 40k games to explore. A lot of them are bad, but some of them are pretty good. If video games aren't for you, but you still want to see stuff explode in high definition, then Warhammer animations are for you. Now, the best Warhammer 40k animation to ever exist is something called Astartes. This was created by one guy and was originally published to YouTube in a 5-part miniseries. Ultimately, Games Workshop took the animations off of YouTube, put them on their own website called Warhammer Plus, and actually hired the guy that made the animation. So there's a couple ways to view it. You can go to Warhammer Plus and view it split into 5 little episodes, or you can go to YouTube and watch a re-upload, and it's about 12 minutes long total. The other animation I recommend actually was made by Games Workshop and came out very recently. It's the Horus Heresy cinematic trailer. The link to that will be down below, or simply type it into your YouTube search bar. It's hard to miss. But that animation is absolutely mind-blowing and should very much get you excited about Space Marines. Here we are in the final section of the video, YouTubers that you should explore. There is a vast ocean of Warhammer 40k content on YouTube, and the 6 channels that I'm about to recommend by no means encompass the full gamut of what there is to explore. So after you get started with some of these channels, let YouTube recommend similar channels to you and be sure to check them out just as well. I've got 3 basic sections for you to think about. The first is long form videos that are focused on lore. One channel is going to be Luton09, and the other channel is going to be Adeptus Ridiculous. Now, both of these channels cover whatever topic the video is on in depth for about 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. And Luton's a little bit more focused on the serious, gritty side of the lore, while Adeptus Ridiculous is more focused on newcomers and being a little bit more lighthearted and having some jokes in the mix. Both of these channels will make for excellent starts for getting your feet wet with the lore, and once you've started painting, these make for a wonderful background. The next segment that I have for you is sort of general YouTube content. These 2 channels kind of exemplify what it is to really be a YouTuber in the Warhammer space as opposed to a Warhammer player on YouTube. That's going to be Squidmar Miniatures and Eons of Battle. These channels both offer a wealth of content and excellent production quality. You cannot go wrong with giving both of them a subscription. And when it comes specifically to learning how to paint and tutorials and guides, I recommend Zumikito Miniatures and Ninjan. Now, Zumikito is great because he keeps things really short and to the point, and he has a plethora of videos that really give you the critical information that you're looking for on the topic. Ninjan, on the other hand, is a little bit newer to YouTube and a little bit goofier, but he's got a lot of great videos and he covers a lot of different products and really does a lot of the testing for you. So again, I recommend all of those YouTubers, but definitely let YouTube recommend you other videos and test everybody out because there's a ton of great content creators out there today. And if there's one final thought that I can leave you with, it's don't get overwhelmed. I've been in this hobby for 23 years and I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. I will absolutely reply. And again, if any of the sections of this video really stood out to you, definitely subscribe and look out for future videos that cover them more in depth. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, hit that like button, and I will see you all next time.